Hey, it's Terry Caliendo. Have you noticed that I yell when I talk? Terry Caliendo, Dedicated Managers here. I'm going to try and talk in a more calm voice and maybe not shout at my screen for a little bit and see if that turns out to be a better video. I went back and watched some videos and it sounded like I was screaming at the TV. TV monitor, what year am I from? I want to talk about I'm getting loud again. I want to talk about the last video where I talked about how I was doing a subquery right here in this area where I would get my results back and then to see if I should gray out the button, disable the one of the buttons, I would do a subquery that used the original query. And I just paged forward one more document. That's what the limit 1 does. And it was a static search ahead, so it just did a get. So it just looked, when the query came in, it just does a quick check ahead to see if there is anything. If there is something, then don't do anything. If there isn't, if the query is empty, then disable something. And the part of that's getting cut off here. But, you know, basically we're disabling this previous button, or when we get to the end here of the results, I've been playing for a while there at the end, so it gets to the end. So it got to this search, it did this search, it found 2 results, and when that search finished, it looked for a 3rd result. That result was not there, and that's what this code is. It came back empty right here, and so it disabled the. I was searching in the forward direction, which is not shown. The difference file is moving that down somewhere to down here, I guess. So this is what ultimately is getting called. The disable next button is getting turned to true. So that's what's happening there when we get to the end. Now I'm making 2 calls, right? So that's really inefficient. I was calling this call. This is an onSnapshot, but well, actually no, it's a new call to an onSnapshot. And so it returns a result of 2, and then it sits there and listens for changes. But once that result comes back the first time, it reaches out to the store and says, hey, storage, or to Firebase storage, and says, hey, is there another item? And that's a static asynchronous call. So we're making 2 calls. You know, this one finishes, comes back, and then we reach out again to see if there's a next. So it's really inefficient. Found a better way to do it. And I'll show that here. The better way to do it was to, when I come in, I take the limit of whatever the person decides it is. This is my default limit, but if they set a limit in the search parameters, which again, that's set up in the dashboard. This is how I set things up, and I'm sending in a limit of 2. So this limit here, this limit variable is ultimately going to be 2 because it's set, so it gets set here. But what I'm doing is, instead of just searching for 2, I'm going to add 1 extra, and I'm going to search 1 further right with that same search, because that was what I was doing anyway. When I came back, I was just doing a step further. So why not just do it in this query? So within the query, I look 1 further. This is some debugging thing I was doing. But I look 1 further within the search. This async should be deleted, because I'm no longer doing asynchronous. I'm just doing 1 single call. I'm not doing a subquery, so I don't need to worry about any extra asynchronous activity within my asynchronous, because this is asynchronous right here. I'm sure none of that is followable other than asynchronous, asynchronous, asynchronous. So back to the task at hand here. We get into this on-query snapshot. We set up, I talked about this in the past, how we set up our search. So we get in here and we run our search. That's what base query is my base search. We do the snapshot on it, which means all this code in here is going to get run. All this code in here is going to get run over and over anytime anytime our query changes. Something that affects our query changes, we'll rerun this callback function that we're sending to it. And so basically everything's the same, except when we get down to this stuff down here, we start looking at, hey, did the query that came back, did it equal the limit plus 1? In other words, was that extra result there? And if it was, well, hey, first of all, let's get rid of that extra result because we don't want to show it to the user. We're just doing it for research purposes. But if we are in the backwards direction, well, let's talk about the forwards direction. If we're looking forward, which would be this direction here, right? If I'm coming from, I'm here and I click next, I'm searching in the forward direction. I've received 2 results. Well, sorry, let's go back. I'm searching, do that. I'm searching in the forward direction. I've received 2 results and there is a result further. So let's keep this next button. Let's show the next button. So that's what's happening here. My query.length is returning the requested amount that the configuration files wants plus 1 more, which means there's 1 more to show after I hit the next button. I had put previously, all these docs I put into this array, which included this extra one. So now I'm just going to pop off that extra one because again, I don't want to display it to the user. So this is what I'm going to display to the user. But after popping off that last one, I now know that there is 1 more, so I can show the next button. And that's what's happening here. So the disable next button in the forward search direction is false, which means it's going to be displayed. And that's pretty much the logic behind it. Hopefully that's figure outable, if that's English, figure outable. And then the rest of the stuff just kind of handles other cases. If there weren't enough results to paginate, so we requested, say, 2 plus 1, 3, but we only came back with maybe 1 result, well then we don't have enough to paginate forward. So that's what this is going to do, is we're ultimately going to, in the forward direction, disable the next button, make that true so that the next button is disabled. So that's the case where we go too far, and here we're here. I clicked next. We got this result. We asked for 3, but only 2 came back. And so we know to disable the next button because there isn't a 3rd one to look for if we go forward. And the cool thing, though, is if another one does get added below, that's going to change our query, our search, because now we're looking 1 ahead. And so now that 1 is going to be there. We went from getting a result of 2 when we were asking for 3, but if that 3rd one comes in, that changes the query, and because now there's a result of 3 instead of 2, and that'll actually get caught by our look forward, and then this button will disappear, or will reappear. And I think I can show that real quick if I open a second window here. It depends on the direction that we're searching in, but let me just copy this. I may screw this up and have to go in the other direction. So we're here. This guy's at the beginning. This guy's at the end. So I'll come here. I'm at the end looking in the forward direction. This may not work because, yeah, it did not show it because it's actually at the beginning. If I go back to the very beginning. So there it is there. So the way to show it, though, is, whoops, now I'm just making all kinds of mistakes. The way to show it is actually to reverse the search. So let's go into the code. And this is what's cool about doing a configuration file, is so I can just change my descending to ascending. And now that's going to reverse the query to being from the most recent, showing the most recent first to the oldest first. So now Billy Bob is that's the oldest entity. And if I go back to, whoops, if I go back to my search here and go to the end, so if I get all the way to the end, so these are going to be the newest. I'm getting to the most newest. And so here's those 2. Let's delete these guys first. And there may be a glitch here, and I'm really getting long here. I should have prepared better. Shoot, because that's where there's a glitch where I lose the array. Let me go to the end here again. I should probably have hit pause, but now it's too late. Let's get to the end. So now we're at the end, and so this is the most recent. Buck Rogers is the most recent entity. So if I add a new one, looking forward, you see that the next button appeared. That's what happened. It doesn't show the extra one, but the next button suddenly appeared. So let me delete this one that I just added, and that should turn this to unclickable. So that extra search that's coming through is not there. So now it's gone. So every time I add something, this onSnapshot that we were discussing here in the store. This onSnapshot is changing because the query changed. Even though it doesn't show that it changed, I'm looking one forward. I'm looking at that third one. When I add that third one, it shows up, but it's not there because I end up deleting it. But it does let me know that there is one more, and so that's my next button. So if I click the next button, there it is, and that'll be live if I start typing, first name, Jeremiah the Bullfrog, that's all live. So that works nicely that way. That might not have been clear. Again, this is pretty in-depth stuff. Mostly it's just, hey, if you see something you like and you know what you're doing, you can probably dig into the code and go into the repo. And it's all committed, in the repo. It's at about this level right here. Where I changed the dashboard entity search to use an extended limit as opposed to a subquery. So that's what I'm talking about here, and there's the last digits of the commit that you could get to get back to that code to shuffle through it. Anyway, that was a quick update. Terry Caliendo, Dedicated Managers, signing off. Have a great day. Happy coding.